Hello there. Welcome to this exciting session today about savings. How do we make money work for us and work for the planet rather than against us? Because unfortunately, a lot of the money in the world at the moment is working against a stable climate, good environment, and a good society. So I'm delighted that we're going to have three really inspirational change makers joining us today who are going to be talking about how they are making change so that we can have money being good for us. And we'll be starting out with Mathias Wikström, then going on to Julia Ménayas from Helios, and then Lucie Pinson from Reclaim Finance. But first of all, I'd like to introduce Mathias Wikström from Doconomy, who is the co-founder and CEO, and he's got a lot of experience in how to make things interesting, even sexy to the world. And we'll discover maybe a bit more about that later. So welcome, Mathias.
Thank you so much, Adam. So happy to be here. So I would like to give you a little bit of background on Doconomy and what we're coming from and what we aim to do. I think the name of this conference is actually best describing what we aim to achieve. There is no silver bullet to the climate crisis. The only silver bullet is action now. So we need to change now. I'm very happy to be here. So what we've done, we've tried to enable data-driven insights to as many as possible. And what we are looking at in regard of insights, in regard of actions and solutions on that is just a brief presentation for you. And then I would love to have a conversation around that. So we are determined that we need to connect the consumption to its impact on the planet. Data says that 60% of an individual's carbon footprint is linked to the choices, the lifestyle choices we make manifested through consumption, choices we make every day, and choices that has aggregated great impact. Environmental calculations will influence all financial transactions in the next decade. Why? Because it has to. Because there has to be a representation not only of the monetary damage done, but also the extraction of resources or the impact, negative impact on our planet. And what we believe to be part of the solution, because this is by no way a one-man show or a one-woman band, this is something we need to do together. So we aim to deliver a global standard for impact calculations, both on transactions and on product level. And already today we see our transaction impact calculations being the market leader, and I think it brings me hope to see. We provide superior services that enables you and me to calculate the environmental impact and understand how we can reduce the same. So what do we aim to do? Well, we want to reduce CO2 emissions with 1 billion tons. And that might sound like a hefty number, but hey, you need to have big targets, right? It's average 1 ton per person a year, and then you can obviously figure out that that would represent 1 million users. So by COP26 this fall, Doconomy aim to have the reach of 1 billion users around the world understanding the carbon footprint linked to their transaction, to their every purchase. Already today, we're pretty well on our way, as we per April had a reach through our partners of 273 million. So we're getting there, but of course, as I said, this is not a one team effort. This is something for you, me, and for everyone else to engage in. So just a brief bragging image of what we do and who we are. So we work through partnerships. We think collaboration is at the key. It's core to everything we do, working with thought leaders and the giants of the world to accelerate this message, to accelerate the opportunity to step up to this responsibility and bring about a more transparent world where every transaction comes with the cost, not only financial, but also planetary. We do that with 2 products. We calculate your every credit card or your every transaction transaction of monetary funds with a CO2 footprint using the category and the data in the transaction. And we also enable any brand in the world to calculate the carbon footprint of their products through the 2030calculator.com. We've reduced the barriers of complexity, cost, and time to a bare minimum for any brand that wants to engage their users in turn. We're proud to be working with some of the front-running banks in the world, ranging from Findomestic in Italy to Bank of the West in the US, Nordea, Klarna, you name it, and there is more coming, and it brings even more hope, because it's through these partnerships we enable understanding by the many. So that's pretty much the brief intro, just to give you a bit of a perspective on who I am and where I'm coming from. And why am I doing this? Well, maybe we will find out more soon.
That's great. Thank you for that. So one of the things that I'd like to find out from you is sort of what is the sort of motivation that you had to start Doconomy, kind of maybe not the kind of direct things in terms of like the detail of what you did, but the kind of bigger picture of why you feel that getting into something like this is important.
I think it's extremely important that insights and ability to act on the climate crisis does not become a elitist movement where we put up barriers in regard of language, talking about the climate crisis in a way that not many people understand, only the experts do. We provide data and services only to the wealthy. We provide opportunity to also benefit from the abilities to bring new innovations around to mitigate the climate crisis only to those who are already doing well. We need to be able to democratize the ability to mitigate the climate crisis. This is a joint effort. We got into this mess together, and the only way out is also together. That's why I think it's important that we have the opportunity to enable everyone, no matter where you're based, what your income is, your gender, anything. Nothing should stop you from being able to contribute to this very, very important issue.
That's fantastic. So, and how much being Swedish did this sort of context of Greta and obviously that I'm sure many people that aren't Swedish are very curious as to how much that's influenced you personally in the country?
Obviously quite a lot. I think Greta has done a fantastic job, but maybe not in the way that most people think, in rallying the many people around an issue. I think the best thing that she's doing is to consistently point at listen to science. This is not an opinion. This is facts. It's not about who has the loudest voice. It's facts. It's not about who has the biggest wallet. It's facts. And I think Greta has done a fantastic job in that space. And being a father myself, I can only be a little bit worried because we're putting so much hope on her shoulders. And I think she's stepping up to it in a fantastic way. And I'm sure she has all the support she needs. But we can't let one kid alone try to change the world. You know, we need to support her and each other in this effort.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, do you have any other sort of people that are sort of, do you look up to or that you think are making good action? And that doesn't necessarily mean they don't need to be global superstars like Greta is. It could be, and it could be in another area that they've seen them make change in an area, and that's inspired you.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I'm blessed with the opportunity to meet a lot of very committed and passionate and very knowledgeable change makers every day. So it's very hard to, you know, pick one or two in front of another. But if I should mention anyone, of course, it's Johan, my co-founder, who I've been working with and struggling for years to get this off the ground. And now that we see the opportunity and this is rolling on, I'm very proud of it. But also Anna-Maria Salonius, who was instrumental, you know, to making the all-on index calculation, the methodology around connecting an impact to every transaction. And as well, I would like to mention Paula de Perna, who was, or still is, of course, one of the absolute frontrunners around carbon, and how she's been advising presidents, the Pope, and even I get to give her a call every now and then.
Great stuff. No, I think that it's important to recognise that it's not, as you said, just about those superstars. We've got Attenborough is joining this program later with the launch of the film. Fantastic. But we can't rely on a 90-plus-year-old man and a teenager to save the world. We need all of us. So I think that's brilliant. So on that level, who are you kind of working with to grow Doconomy?
We always believe that we need to rely on really passionate partners. And you sometimes hear that, governments need to do that or corporates need to do that. I believe that people need to change. People need to be at the core of this opportunity to mitigate the crisis and get positive change about. And in every corporation, in every government, there is people that are burning for this. So we have brilliant people that we're working with at MasterCard, which could come as a surprise. What are MasterCard doing about this? But they have already enabled CO2 impact calculations in every transaction in their core platform on global level. And that is, that is disruptive change, I would say, not only to people, but also to payment industry. We have Standard & Poor making the leading financial market data that are used in billion-dollar transaction being able to put at the fingertips of the consumers in daily lifestyle choices. You have the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat and many, many more.
Brilliant, brilliant. So one of the things that I think is very important in this area is transparency. How are you kind of helping drive transparency? And first of all, maybe why is transparency important to you?
Well, I think it's like Jean-Paul Sartre said, once you know and are aware, you can choose to do something, or you can choose to do nothing, but you're still aware. And I think what we're trying to do is basically about educating the many, driving awareness around this topic, and doing it in a data substantiated way, so it doesn't become an opinion, it's a fact. And with that said, transparency that is based on data, you can't really ignore. And data and the digital services that are in line today, I mean, we got all the tools really that we need, but they are fragmented in different places. If we could put those tools and that data together to work to educate the many, I think we would see an amazing development going forward. I think it was Hugo Chavez who said, if the world was a bank, it would have been saved already.
Great, yeah. And so what are you doing yourself with Doconomy to kind of increase that transparency? How are you doing that within your business?
Excellent question. And very important, because what we do is we divide our key performance indicator into two parts. One is around purpose and one is around profit. And why is purpose and profit relevant? Well, profit because we need to be able to be around. We need to be substantiated as a company to be able to drive this change in an everlasting format. Out of a purpose perspective, we also need to do as we preach. So we measure ourselves not only if we manage to reach a lot of people, but also how much we help them manage to reduce their footprint. We measure our staff on the carbon footprint on a monthly basis. We do it on our full operations. And we also look at this not necessarily only out of an environmental perspective, out of the ESG factors, but also out of a social perspective. So looking at the gender balance, not only in staff, but also in the management positions, the management team, the investors, the board of directors. We want to be a positive force for good. And the footprint that we leave should be a mindful footprint that enables everyone else to take part.
Right. And then final question, and this is kind of a big question, but it's going to need a shortish answer, unfortunately, which is, so maybe just pick out one idea from this, is if you're going to be, because you're trying to change a whole industry, and that's not easy. So when trying to change one that's as big as finance, how are you kind of making that change? And it might be just one thing that you're doing that you think is a good example of that.
By finding the most passionate, intelligent, and engaged people in every organization, in every bank of the world, because they know, just like we do, that this can be done if we work together.
Fantastic. That's a great and a very, very short and succinct answer. So that was perfect. Thank you so much.
Did my best.
And also, just as you actually referred to your co-founder Johan, unfortunately he was due to join us today, but he's quite ill. So if you are watching us, Johan, I hope you get better soon. And thank you so much, Mathias, for that fantastic talk through your situation and how we create change by finding those amazing people.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you. So we now are moving on to our second section, where we're going to be talking to Julia Ménayas, who is the co-founder of Helios, the sustainable banking platform. Julia's been an analyst and consultant, and she is passionate about making the world a better place. So hello, Julia.
Hi, Adam. Hi, everyone. Super happy to be here today.
And so what I'd like to just start off with, really just give people a flavor of what Helios is. So we've kind of got a context as to why you're talking to us today.
Sure. So I think I'll start with our purpose. So we built Helios about 1 year ago with the purpose of making banking sustainable for everyone. So what we offer at this point are banking products, starting with banking accounts, with a mobile app and a credit card made of wood, actually, that actually has the power to first tell you exactly where your money goes, so it's 100% transparent. And second, you contribute to the ecological transition from the very first euro you put in your banking account. So transparency and climate action, exactly what we offer through our banking products.
Fantastic. So how are banks actually contributing to the climate crisis? Because we wouldn't need you if they weren't. So what are they doing?
Well, at first, when you think about climate change and the climate crisis, obviously banking is not top of mind, right? You think more of the food industry, somehow the fashion industry, etc. But banking is not top of mind for most of the people, right? So what happens there? So first, one key number. So this comes from a report made by Reclaim Finance and our next speaker today, Lucie Pinson. So what is $3,800 billion that were invested in fossil fuels? So fossil fuel, we're talking about coal, about fuel, about gas as well. And this was since the Paris Climate Agreements in 2015. So aside from the key number that doesn't talk much to everyone, the trajectory here is really disturbing, because those investment in fossil fuels has grown by 15% since 2015 in the Paris Climate Agreement. So obviously, through bank financing activities, now we are not going in the right direction, and we are not aligned with the trajectory that was advertised in the Paris Climate Agreement. Meaning +2 degrees or +1.5 degrees of global warming. So that's a bit of an overview of where is the issue here through the banking industry. And second, I'll say about the why. So why and how banks are actually participating in the climate crisis at this point. So in a common understanding, when you put the money at the bank, it kind of sleeps and it waits there for you to go and withdraw it, right? But actually money is circulating. So when you put money at the bank, it allows the bank to create some investments, some financing scheme that they then allow and give to people, to businesses, also to states. And among those investments and financing schemes are a lot of industries that are really harming the environment, biodiversity, and our climate. So that's how this whole thing works. And coming from our personal experience, so our team from finance, regular finance. Actually, my co-founder was building ESG strategies in a regular bank, and we noticed a very big gap between the pro-climate marketing and communication of banks, right, and the reality of the investment choices that are actually made today, meaning that we keep investing in industries that we really can't and won't like to be, dealing with in a few years' time.
Wow, yeah. So what brought you personally into this field? Let's get a little bit of an understanding of Julia as well.
Sure. So myself, I come from a consulting background and also a VC background. So I was helping young companies try to, develop themselves and make a business out of it, right? And I was very frustrated to see that in this innovation ecosystem, we see amazing entrepreneurs. We see a lot of new ideas, but most of them are not actually to the benefit of environmental or social benefits, right? So I wanted to kind of reconcile and link the two, meaning innovation and social environmental impact can be super powerful, right? So this is really where I come from and why I'm engaged in Helios at this point.
Fantastic. So this is where you kind of come from. This is the problem. How can we start to change this?
Sure. So that's a big challenge actually to change the banking industry. So I say first, to actually change this industry is, we have to break the opacity. We have to bring transparency and hold banks accountable for what they're doing with our money, right? So this is exactly what we offer at Helios, meaning that all our investments are made public. So all of our users and anyone actually can see where we put our money on our bank account, on our mobile app, on our website as well. So it's just transparency is still not there as much as it should in the banking industry. So it's very I offer you to kind of ask your banker, where do my money go when it sits in my bank account? And that's a very funny exercise to do, right? Because most of the banker would say, well, actually, I don't really know. I'll ask my management. So that's the first thing, transparency. And second, actually, we can have an impact as citizens, as banking clients as well, through our credit cards. So the way I see it is our bank accounts, our credit cards are really much like ballot papers, right? You can actually vote for the model of society and of the economy that you want to be developing in the next years going ahead through the choice of your bank. So by changing banks, first you put some pressure on regular banks for them to actually transform more rapidly and more drastically when it comes to climate. So it's very much of a political engagement, but also you can start moving your money from fossil fuels industries to more of a positive economy, right? That is less destructive to the environment or biodiversity.
Fantastic. So our bank accounts really do matter then. And so can you kind of give any examples where you've seen that things have been starting to change? Where are you seeing this changes starting to appear?
Sure, I think the change has started a lot actually in many industries. So we see people more engaged than ever in changing the way they consume, the way they buy. But banking is still, the last industry that needs to do is ecological revolution. So when you think about it, really money governs our world, right? Through money, we shape and develop new industries. So as a citizen, you can feel like powerless, right? When you see the big banks and big institutions and feel, what can I do about it? But if we put things into perspective, in France alone, so coming from Paris and France, I have a very French mindset here, but we have more than 5,000 billion euros that are sitting and sleeping on our bank account. So it's huge, right? And so 5,000 billion euros, that's a lot. And aside from that, we often say that in France, to actually fund this ecological transition, the transformation of our industries to more sustainable models, we will need 1,000 billion euros each year. So we actually have this huge lever and this huge power into our hands, and we just need to first become aware of it, and second, actually take it into action.
Fantastic. So can you give me some more flavor of how this kind of new banking model might work, both maybe in the short term and the longer term?
Sure. So I think the way we can actually change this banking industry going forward and seize, fossil fuels investment as soon as possible, because really now we cannot afford to fund, new coal power industries or new extraction fuels, etc. So we need to first. So and this is our view from Helios, right? To introduce some competition in the market, put some pressure on banks to show them that you can actually do things differently by, giving full transparency to the clients and, directing our investment to sustainable industries. So really showing that this is something that is possible to be made at this point. And second, also by introducing some competition in the banking industry, you can also show that clients are willing to do the change. And if banks do not transform themselves fast enough, they will actually quit their historical bank to new banks. So through introducing this competition, we can help the change happen faster. And second, obviously, in the longer term, Helios alone and eco banks alone are not gonna, do it by themselves. But we need to work together, and this is how we do it with Helios, to work with NGOs, with regulatory bodies as well, and with every people that want to be engaged in this ecological revolution of banking, to put through different angles some pressure here for the banking industry to change.
That's fantastic. So tell me a bit more about Helios itself then. Are you actually a bank, or how would you describe yourselves?
Sure. So I think we can say that Helios is somehow a neobank, so a new banking model. But we like to quote ourselves as eco-bank, right? Because somehow, like neobanks, digital banks did this kind of digital revolution of the banking industry about 10 years ago. And now we absolutely need to do the ecological revolution of the banking industry through new models that are called like eco-bank. So at Helios, we are live now it's been 3 months. And we have had the support of 14,000 people all around France, going to, wanting to make the banking industry more sustainable by putting some pressure on banks. And yes, so as I said, the first project that we offer at this point is a sustainable banking account with a wooden credit card and a super cool mobile app that allows you to manage your money on a day-to-day basis super easily. You can actually create your account in 8 minutes through our mobile app that you can find in the Apple Store or Google Play. And second, we are really building this whole venture and adventure with our clients and our community. So it's actually our community that is choosing where we should go next. So now we're working on a shared account and some savings products as well, to actually be able to offer a full alternative to a regular bank at this point.
Fantastic. So, and which country is it? France that you're available in?
So we are available in France, Luxembourg, and Belgium at this point. But anyone actually with a French address or Belgium address or a Luxembourg address can order their card to Helios. And we would love to expand more. So maybe a last update about Helios. We were able to actually fund a first project through the help of our very first customers. So we were able to participate in the funding of a new solar central power in New Caledonia, which makes green energy available to 1,700 households in New Caledonia, and finally avoid the emission of 3,400 tons of CO2 each year. So it's a start, right? But we are very proud to be part of this journey here.
Wow, that's fantastic. And so you've got plans to expand around Europe then?
Sure. So I think Rome, was built in more than one day. So obviously we start with France, Luxembourg, Belgium, and we'll be super excited to grow around Europe with amazing partners like, for instance, Doconomy or others. So yes, obviously Europe is next on our roadmap, but for that we need the total support of the French markets to be able to expand.
That makes sense. And so what does it feel like you're not exactly the stereotype of a banker? because that's what you are. You're effectively a banker now, and the stereotype of a banker is, male and old, and obviously, you're younger and female. So, how does that feel going into that world, which is has a stereotype of what a banker is?
Sure. So I think we think about ourselves as eco bankers, right? If you want to push the pun a bit further. So yeah, sure, we are two female co-founders for Helios, and we come from the financial industry at first, and we are actually, we really don't care about not being the stereotypical banker, and we think actually we feel responsible for being insiders in this industry, having seen how this whole things work and how we can actually make an impact and shift this industry from the inside. So yeah, I think it's more of a pride, to be very different from a regular banker and trying to shift the banking industry in a different direction.
I mean, I think it's fantastic personally, that, because it we've been talking about today about democratization of banking, and by having somebody who isn't a stereotype leading the way in this is just a fantastic sort of testament to what we need to do. We need everybody involved, whatever their age, their color, their gender. So as we start to close, what else would you say about what you're doing going forward? What's kind of exciting you, either about what's happening now or going forward?
So what's exciting about now is that we really see something happening in the retail market for banking. So for years, NGOs and other institutions have tried to build awareness about the opacity and the carbon footprint of the banking industry, but it was very difficult to be heard right in the market. But at this point, I think people are really starting to understand where their power lies and how big of an impact they can have through choosing the right bank and through the allocation of their own money. So this shift is really happening. We can see it in all Europe happening. And one key number about that, so we've done a study with an opinion poll called OpinionWay, which stated that 2/3 of the French citizens said that they were ready to change banks actually to make sure that their money will not have a bad impact on the environment or society. So here we're seeing things accelerate very fast, and this awareness being built a bit everywhere around Europe. And second, what's exciting about what's coming next is the fact that we see different kind of players, and this is really our will with Helios, working together. So Helios is a purpose-driven company. It's actually a legal status. So we are working with some different shareholders in the ecosystem, from NGOs to our clients to the regulatory bodies out of Europe for the banking industry. And it's only because we are working together where we can actually have an impact and make this industry change for good.
Fantastic. And so looking forward then for you, how are you thinking? Because one of the things you said is that lots of people say that they would change, but getting people to change is a very different thing between people saying they'll change. So just as the final sort of comment from you, can you give me an example or examples about how you're helping turn people's talk into action?
Sure. So I think when you think about climate change, there's a lot of guilt, right, that we put on citizens and consumers, how they should do things differently, etc. And there's a lot of mental weight somehow that is, given to everyone. But when you think about it, a big part of the issue is actually sitting in big banks, and this guilt should not be put on regular citizens as much as it is at the case at the moment. So what we're saying and how we make people come from talks to actually actions by making the change super easy, right? So what we built at Helios is first an onboarding flow that is super easy. So you can open your account in 8 minutes time. So that's never happened in the banking industry whatsoever to actually open an account that fast. And second, we are also You can actually change banks super easily. It's free and legally you're not bound to any bank historically. Actually, in all Europe, there is no, it's illegal to kind of keep your clients to yourself. So you're free to go to one bank if you want. So that's how we make it happen at Helios.
Fantastic. That's a great finish. How you make sustainability work for people is actually make it better than the competition. So that's fantastic. So now we are moving on to Lucie Pinson, who is the founder and executive director of Reclaim Finance. And she's got a long and great career as a campaigner, and now she's bringing it to this fantastic world that we are now in of how do you change things through the finance. So can you give us kind of the headlines of what Reclaim Finance is then, Lucie?
Sure. And thanks a lot for your invitation. So I am the founder of Reclaim Finance, which is a France-based NGO, even if currently we are growing and we do have staff in other parts in Europe and in San Francisco as well. We are affiliated to Friends of the Earth France, and we are specialized on finance and climate-related issues. What we do basically is we do engage financial institutions to push them to change their activities and financial services in order to reduce their impact on the climate and on the biodiversity and the people. In order to do so, we do a lot of research, obviously, to track and monitor the current impact of the banks, of the insurers, of the investors, and to really try to understand what is being actually happening behind the very nice green speeches. And we do also a lot of research on specific sectors where we want to see change happening. So, for example, if we do want banks or the other financial institutions to stop financing the coal industry, we will do a lot of research about what is the coal industry, what are the companies active in it. We are working with a strong network of NGOs who can also provide a lot of information about that. And we will do this research in order to build the current measures that will make change possible and would have an impact on the ground. So when we have that, we will engage with financial institutions, we will present these measures that need to be implemented, and we will obviously explain why they need to change our activity, not only because of a financial and economic point of view, but also because of a human and social and environmental impact that it will bring. And when we are doing so, obviously, we are also explaining to them that if they don't act, we will also take actions against them to display the reality of their activities and the impact it will have on the people. Which raises another discussion, which is obviously the risk of being highlighted as a greenwasher publicly. Banks and insurers and investors do put a lot of money in defending their logos, the brand, and as positioning themselves as green and as players of the energy transition. So our papers, our research, our campaigns can be drivers also to push them to operate change faster than they will do without any public pressure.
Fantastic. So that's like, obviously there's a lot going on there, but you're a busy person, I know, and it's particularly this week. And I understand you were doing something quite exciting yesterday. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you were bringing into reality that kind of theory and that big picture that you were talking about?
Yeah, maybe before going to what happened yesterday, which was Total AGM, we need to understand a little bit where we are today in terms of decarbonizing the financial sector. As Julia was saying just before me, we have identified 800 billions of dollars of financing to the fossil fuel industry since the Paris Agreement was adopted. And this financing has been annual financing to fossil fuels by the 60 biggest banks have been increasing year after year. we have seen progress being made on the coal sector. However, it's still really a lot of things needs to be done. Like we have identified through the coal policy tool, 260 policies adopted by financial institutions on coal. But when we really look at what is behind these policies and these pledges by financial institutions to cut the financing to the coal sector, we actually realize that most of these policies are completely greenwashing, that there is no strong measures that can actually stop the banks and investors and insurers to provide the financial services that are required for companies to build new coal plants or new coal mines or to maintain their operation. So actually, we are still doing a lot of things to actually push financial institutions to stop financing coal for good. But when it comes to France, French financial institutions, we can actually give that to them. We can acknowledge it. They have done a lot of work to clean the portfolio from the coal industry. So they have adopted what we call strong exit coal policy. However, we realize obviously that they have done nothing on the oil and gas sector. And as the EIA published in its scenario, in its net zero scenario last week, we won't achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. We won't keep global warming at 1.5 if we only cut financing to the coal sectors. And there is a strong need to tackle right now the financial services to the oil and gas industry. Currently, we know that any new oil projects or gas production projects is inconsistent with as Paris Agreement climate targets, and that we need to push companies such as Shell, BP, Total, etc., to really put a hand in their expansion strategy to no longer develop new oil and gas projects and to start engaging the phase out of the existing operations, considering the production of oil and gas must decline rapidly if we want to keep global warming at 1.5. Knowing that, we have been engaging financial institutions on the oil and gas sectors, and one of the main responses that we got and that you might read in the media is that, oh no, we don't want to exclude these companies. We need to engage with them. We need to encourage them to transition. This is in the idea that if you cut financing to a financial institution, to a company, another financial institutions will take the seat. We could talk about it later, which actually is not really funded on any facts. But there is this idea that it's better to stay in, and talk to the company, change the company from the inside. So we started monitoring what financial institutions are actually doing when it comes to engaging some of the biggest polluters, the oil and gas majors, such as Total. Total is one of the top 20 global emitters worldwide. Total is currently planning an increase of 30% of its gas production and is busy opening up new projects in East Africa with a strong impact on human rights, with strong displacement of the population, strong impacts on biodiversity, considering its big lakes and the region of the Great Parks in East Africa. Total is also busy opening up new projects in the Arctic, profiting of the fact that the ice is melting to develop new business opportunities, etc., etc. I could carry on much longer. So knowing that, we were really interested to see how financial institutions will vote yesterday, considering Total for the first time was presenting to its shareholders an advisory vote, its climate plan. These climate plans that do for example, as 3 measures. One of them is the reduction of the carbon intensity of the energy provided, which doesn't mean Total is committing to do less oil and gas. Total is committing to do slightly less dirty barrels of oil and gas. And we were looking, and as I said, this plan still allow an increase of the oil and gas production. And so we were expecting financial institutions that don't care about climate to, as usual, vote with the management of the company and supports Total's climate plan. However, we were really interested in looking at how financial institutions that display themselves as being engaged in the fight against climate change were voting. And what we could see is that actually a decreasing low number of shareholders actually stand for climate actions and told Total, no, your plan is not good enough. We know it's not going to bring us to 1.5, so we are going to vote against. Only 8.12% of the shareholders, which we could name, but they are, as a fact, not the bigger brands of the people who, and not the bigger brands, so people listening might not know them. They had the courage to vote with the conviction and with climate science aligned with the requirements by the EIA. And the reality is the big brands, the BNP Paribas, the Amundi, which is the asset manager of Crédit Agricole, the AXA, etc., and the BlackRock, they did voted with management and for the adoption of this plan. And here we can see the reality of the challenge that we are facing. We do have financial institutions, BNP Paribas, AXA, that have pledged to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 and votes against the recommendation of the EIA itself, which says if Total wants to achieve that, if you as a bank or investor or an insurer want to achieve this carbon neutrality target, you need to stop the expansion of fossil fuels. But they are actually voting in favor of a plan that increases gas production by 30%. It's not 2%, it's 30%, while climate science tells us that we need to reduce it by 3% every year starting now. And we do have Amundi, obviously, which is the biggest investors in Total, which is also voting with the company. And we can see here that it's more because of the short profits that they can get off supporting company than really understanding that in the long-term interest lies obviously in the long term. So that's the complexity of the situation, and we could complexify even more while saying that actually these financial institutions that do voted with Total, some of them a week before said, oh yeah, Total's climate plan is not good enough. It's not going to bring the change that needs to happen if we want to limit global warming with 1.5. So the understanding is here. They know the facts. Climate science is very clear. We can see also that the climate situation is worsening with the impacts that are also bigger and bigger on the population. However, in terms of actions, we are still seeing very incremental change that will not be enough to prevent global warming to 3-4 degrees.
Wow, there's it's that kind of discrepancy between, again, it's what they say and what they do. And it's what we do is we need to help them align, don't we? And that's what you're doing. In a sense, you're helping them, these institutions, align their actions with their words. But it's a very different way you're helping align actions with words compared to what Julia's doing. So what is there a kind of a narrative about how do you feel it's your place or is it somebody else's place to help the big oil, big fossil fuel think about where they transition to? Because they've got a business model which is focused on climate chaos now. And they're either ignoring that or they're in a deep denial. But there's obviously ways that what they deliver is energy. And at the moment, the way they deliver that energy is through what causes climate chaos. So is there any conversation about how they can deliver energy in different ways?
So as Reclaim Finance, as our name is saying, we are talking to the financial institutions directly, which also need actually to understand where the change can be done, and they need to in order to also engage or take the right decision in terms of investment in the energy sector. So we do spend a lot of time talking to them about the reality of the energy sectors. As a matter of fact, I think a lot of them are quite ignorant, especially at the top level, about the reality of the climate situation and what needs to happen. Not a long time ago, a CEO told me, "Oh, you know, Lucie, there is not such much difference between 1.5 and 2 degrees. You are making a big deal out of that for no reason." And when we can hear that 3 years after the IPCC has published a report just about this topic, showing that there is a world of difference between 1.5 and 2 degrees, you understand that actually they don't understand the urgency of and the gravity of the situations. Another thing is that I think in our mind, we still believe that we could solve the energy crisis, and we can also provide energy for society only through big projects and centralized energy system. And the financial industry representatives don't keep track actually of the change being happening in the energy sectors. A little bit as the EIA for a lot of time, and still in its net zero climate scenario that has been published last week, the EIA is still underestimating the power of renewable energies. So every year the EIA make projection about the development of renewable energy, which are outpassed by the reality of the change in the market. And so our job is also to show to these financial institutions, in order to give them the tools to engage or to adopt the right decisions, give them the information about the reality of the energy sector, the fact that, hey, renewable plus batteries will be in 3 years' time from now, will be more competitive than existing gas plant in the US, for example, which is obviously a big energy market. So that's a time of information we need to bring to them. But however, as I said before, we are still an NGO, so we don't only sit around the table with them. We also need to build the public pressures, and that's where also all the change makers or the troublemakers as Helios are very good to have, because they are showing to the population that we can make things differently. And they are also participating in putting the pressures on the mainstream players to push them to change faster than they will do without being under pressure, because obviously it's not only about the facts, it's not only about the economics, it's not only about the existence of alternative, it's also about how financial institutions in the energy sector are very interconnected. There has been a study published by Desmog a month ago that shows that 60% of the European banks, of the big banks, are connected with the fossil fuel industry. So we could understand that obviously there are also personal interests at stake that can block climate actions. And that's why we need to bring the pressure on them publicly to make to make it more costly for them to carry on with their activity, with business as usual, than to operate a change.
Fantastic. So obviously, if people care about how they can make a difference in this area of savings, they can change to an eco bank such as Helios, or engage with Doconomy. But then there's also this big picture that you've been describing here, which you're taking action on. So how would you suggest, if the audience wants to do more than just change their bank account, or maybe they've already changed their bank account, what else could they do to get involved to help make the change happen faster?
So obviously, putting your bank in a green bank is a great first step. However, we need to understand that we have a window of opportunity to implement the change that are needed in society to keep global warming at 1.5, which is very, very narrow. And to be perfectly green in our way of consuming, of managing our money, is not going to be enough. We really need to make change happening at the structural global banks and companies. So for that, it's important to take additional actions to support NGOs such as Reclaim Finance, but we are not the only one on social media to make financial donation is obviously very needed in order to allow the NGO to grab opportunities and to run strategic campaigns, but obviously it's also very important to be part of the change also in your free time. So to become a volunteer at Reclaim Finance, we do really geeky research. So we do have a small group of volunteers, but who are really doing a lot of research on with us. For example, looking at the lobbying for of the gas industry on the green taxonomy at the EU level. That's done by also volunteers that are helping us building that. And obviously we are part of a bigger movement. So it's also about understanding where you can make a difference, considering the climate movement is very vast, is very broad, and we need a big box of competencies. And if you don't like doing research, but maybe you do like taking civil disobedience actions, also you can find a group in your town to do that, or you have a good cook. So social movements, when we do organize actions, we also need to eat at one point of the day, so we need people to do that as well. Or you are a good person to deal with logistic, so you can also bring these things that you know how to do it to a bigger projects to change society.
Well, I think that fits very well with Mathias's closing conclusion, which was that we need talented and passionate people to be taking action. And so, as we say, you can change banks, you can donate to these initiatives such as Reclaim Finance, and you can volunteer, you can get out there. You could be somebody like Mathias or Julia or Lucie. And so, you can be that change now. And whether you're just thinking about it or you're just about to change out of your existing job, I think we've got some real inspiration here about both the practical reality of what's being delivered and then also those change makers that are making that delivery happen. So I just want to thank so much Mathias, Julia, and Lucie, and all the people that help and support them make that happen. My name's Adam Woodhall. I didn't actually explain who I was at the start. I forgot that. I run an initiative called Lawyers for Net Zero, which is kind of trying to do a part of what these guys are doing for the legal sector. So thank you so much, the audience as well, for paying your attention, and go out and be change now. Thank you.